Yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy, the Insane Game Fix. Get some money, cool here. Black Clover just hit its 330th chapter, which isn't like a crazy milestone, but it is, as we know of, the end of the Spade Kingdom arc. Which, if you're an anime only watcher, they finally finished the arc that they kind of stopped in the middle of because they got too close to the manga. And people are not happy with this arc. And so, as an objective fan, and as someone who, out of the current Shonen Jump lineup, would say Black Clover is his favorite, not in terms of it being a better written show, in terms of just pure enjoyment, I enjoy Black Clover more than I enjoy like My Hero or even Jujutsu Kaisen. I wanted to talk about the arc, and this is spoiler filled, so if you don't want to deal with spoilers, then you need to GTFO. Thankfully, respectfully, I'll see you guys for the next video. But we're going to talk about the arc and its ups and downs and whether or not and how I feel about it, objectively, things I like and what I don't like. And we're just going to have fun with it and see where it takes us. So let's start to where I think the arc gets the most is when the tide kind of shifts on the arc. I think the majority of the fan base didn't have a real issue with the Spade Kingdom arc until I want to say probably around the Magna Dante fight, and or what I really think it is the Megicula fight with Noelle and Gaja and Charlotte and Rail. I think that's the fight that most people is where the problems really kick in. Although, I mean, the Magna Dante fight, I think most people, even people who have issues with that fight, don't mind it because of how well it handles though that character and the flaws of Dante as a character, and just the and even like the nice moment they give at the end with Jack. I think most people would forgive that fight for any faults you may or may not see in it. I think personally that's like my favorite fight of the fucking arc. I think almost the entire fan base probably agrees with that. That is my favorite fight of the entire arc. And God, if they animate that with the proper respect it deserves, it will be legendary. But no, I think the fight that probably causes the beginning of the rift with the fan base was probably the Megicula fight for a couple of different reasons. The first reason, it kind of, I'll stick on, I will say just Megicula herself. And it kind of, this actually crosses over with Lucifero too. You shouldn't have killed Megicula. I think so. So the biggest problem with Megicula is that Megicula is a long-standing issue. Like the effects Megicula has had on various characters is very fucking important. There's a couple things I don't like about that fight, so let's go through it. The first thing is Megicula herself. Killing Megicula, I'm like half and half on because I get it, but it would have been nice to have her. Like, it's such a conflicting situation because I understand Megicula has a curse on Laura Pachica, has a curse on the Noelle family, on the Silva family, and even originates from the curse of Charlotte's family. So I get the importance of having to deal with her, especially considering you put that time limit on Laura Pachica. So I'm like half and half on whether or not you should have killed her or she should have died in that fight. It's just a hard, that one's a hard situation. I do like Noelle being at the end of that fight. I felt like Noelle should have been included. The other person I think that should have been included, and I really think that now, considering the arc is over and she didn't get to fucking really do anything, is Dorthy. Man, it irks me that Dorthy is the way Noelle properly finds out about Megicula before the 6-month time skip, and she's not in that fight. And part of me was annoyed because Dorthy hasn't done anything really. Like, Dorothy's big two notes is us finding out what her magic is and then her inherent personality, which we don't find out until the latter end of the Elf arc, which, by the way, after Elf Dorthy gets her shit kicked in, Dorothy's just MIA for the rest of the fucking arc, which kind of sucks. So we get into this arc and I see that she's awake and we're gonna get her in the arc. I'm like, cool, and she's in the arc early. So all I need to do is see her scene and she's just gone. Dorothy just disappears with Fuegoleon and Noelle. those characters are just gone for a while, right? And then we finally get to see those characters again. And Dorothy's the first time we see Dorothy after not seeing her for a while she's being a decoy for some of the lesser enemies is Loki getting her shit kicked in by fucking Morris. And God, we haven't even touched on Morris. So the first problem I have with the Megicula fight is I think Dorothy should have been included in that fight, especially considering she doesn't get to do anything for the rest of the fucking arc. So, would have been nice. The second thing we got to bring up is Gaja. Oh my goodness, Gaja. So I understand that the shit they pulled with Gaja is the same shit I would expect from Oda. Like, to me, the Gaja nonsense is almost on the same tier as the Pell nonsense, where a character is pretty much dead, but not really dead, but should be fucking dead, but isn't actually dead. And Gaja was even more ridiculous because essentially they just assumed that man was just dead for a portion of the section and literally just refused to let the body die. And then by the time it got to the point where the body should have died, here comes Mimosa, and we get that whole overruling reality is what magic's all about line, which, oh, no, Noelle, no, what? I get it, but no, just no. And then the third, and I think that actually, I think the Gaja thing is probably the most offensive thing about that fight. Overall, I think Gaja is the most offensive thing about that fight, which is why if anyone has discussions about the Megicula fight, that's the one thing they're probably going to bring up before anything else. Gaja should have died, y'all. Gaja should have died. And most people would be like, he probably should have, realistically. I'm not even going to front on that. He probably should have died. That's some One Piece type shit. To have a character not be dead, but really much be dead, and then not kill him. It's just weird. Especially considering he was the only character that would have died in that fight. Next to, like, fucking Megicula. So I felt like that would have been a fair trade-off. Especially considering the motherfucker uses... You know what? I'm not going to go into it. The point is, the motherfucker uses, like, this god tier magic, and then he does it twice, and then Megicula's the one who dies. It's just like, what? No. The third thing is Real. So Real situation is very fucking weird because Real went from, man, Real ain't doing shit in this fight, because realistically in the first half of the fight, that's all Charlotte. Charlotte's just whooping ass. And then she goes 100%, and then Megicula comes out, and Real ain't doing shit. Real, literally up until the section where he's relevant, doesn't really do anything. And then he comes in with this broken ass spell, and motherfuckers were mad. And I'm like half and half with it. When you have a magic is like kind of obtuse as like painting magic, you kind of have to acknowledge there's gonna be some looseness on like abilities. I'm not really mad at the whole Twilight of Valhalla. The only thing that bothered me is that essentially Mimosa went right behind it and just said, fuck the side effects of that ability. And you're just like, what? why do you get that ability? What the fuck? Like it's funny that this arc literally proved Mimosa's is the most broken healing mage in the series. She has no business. The fact that she can heal wounds that the fucking queen of a nation can't heal. And like, what? Bitch, Mimosa literally is the most broken healing mage. Like, god damn. And the fact that it happens like twice with her, it's like, what the fuck is going on? So I'm not really mad at Real specifically, because he doesn't do anything else in the fight. So to give him this cool ability that has a backlash effect, but it kind of gives you the ability of like cheating death for a little while, I can tolerate that. I think the fandom would have tolerated Gaja almost dying from the fucking pretty much killing himself, being saved by the spell so he could get it off one more time, and then dying. I think people would have been like, fine, that's perfectly cool, because Gaja would still die in the end. And then Mimosa comes in and goes, nope, fuck all that shit, because magic overrules reality. And you're just like, what? So that's the problem with the Megicula fight. I think it really I think Mimosa, Gaja, and probably I guess Rail would be the three main problems, but I think realistically it's more on Gaja and Mimosa than anything. Then the Zenon fight, I don't know how people feel about. I haven't really read up on. I think people might be. For me, the Zenon fight is fine. I get that people don't like the fact that essentially gets a second grimoire, but it makes sense considering you find out his royal blood history. You're not from the Clover Kingdom, so you really got to place. My question more so is, does he only have his star magic, or does he have his star and wind magic? From my understanding, it sounds like he has both. But I wonder if there's gonna be like some lore complications that'll kind of dictate it with at least. But overall, the Zenon fight is fine. The only thing I don't like about the Zenon fight is that Tabata does that thing where he does the cliffhanger with Langris and Finral working together, and then they low-key get off-screened in the next chapter, and you're just like, why did you even put them there? Like, what the fuck? Like, Finral and Langris are like, we're better together, and then they don't really get to do much. I mean, obviously Zenon's kind of broken as an ability, so I didn't expect, them to one-shot him, but damn, it's like a couple of panels, bruh. I think it was like 1 or 2 panels, and then it was like, yeah, y'all ain't doing shit to Zenon, and you're just like, well, that's kind of a shame. Personally, that just was a shame to me. But overall, I don't really have any real issues with the Zenon fight, and like I said, I love the Dante fight with Magna, so none of those fights bother me. I've already talked about my main issues with the other fights, and then we get into Morrison. What? So I've already talked about Dorthy, which is like part of my problem with that. The other problem I have with that is that Morrison is a fucking joke. Like, why? And it makes you mad because it was set up in a way that you could have almost forgiven how dumb Dante was. Because it's like, oh, well, my true host is Morrison. Dante is a placeholder host. And you're like, cool. And then Morrison low-key just gets one-shotted by the Black Bulls. And you're just like, huh? And you're like, all right, what? Even there's something they even do with Luck in like the fairy is, I don't want to call them, I say the Noelle squad, where they all come in and use their ultimate magic to kind of mow down the other devils, right? The low tier going into mid tier devils, and then the Dread's like, oh, by the way, like, your magic will work well for the low tier devils, but when the mid tier devils come out, you might have some problems because they're not going to go down as easy. They say this, and then immediately right afterwards, Luck goes and like one-shots like 4 or 5 of them without any real effort whatsoever. And you're like, what? What's going on? I mean, Luck is strong. So, like, Jesus Christ. I'm just like, what's happening, bruh? But yeah, Morrison's a joke. They made the demons a joke. Mereleona's queen like usual. It's funny that she's consistently well written in every arc she's in. It fucks me up that he always seems to get Mereleona could be in situations where she has no business winning. Because that Lucifero shit was hilarious. Where you had every other captain get their shit pushed in, and the only 2 relevant captains is a captain that's been kidnapped half of the arc, which is Yami, and fucking Queen Mereleona. What the fuck? I love it because she's goated, but just what the fuck is we doing? What the fuck? Which kind of gets into my issue with the arc as a whole. That like it uses so many characters, and there are so many that just don't get to do enough. I feel like of the Noelle squad, you really undershot pretty much everybody but Noelle. Except for maybe like Luck. And even Luck doesn't do a lot, but he does do some things. I mean, for God's sakes, he's at least included in the Megicula fight, which is more than I can say to fucking Leopold or fucking Charmy. And actually, really Leopold. Leopold and Fuegoleon bum me the fuck out. Especially because everyone's already brought it up. If you gonna let fucking Noelle get Spirit Dive and fucking get Spirit Dive, and you got a captain with a fire spirit, one from a goated family, and you telling me that Fuegoleon can't get Spirit Dive? Fuck you, Tabata. He was right there. Especially when his sister is throwing hands and this bitch has no spirit. She just got hands. Like, what the fuck? Oh, the Fuegoleon thing bothered me because I'm like, bro, he's right there. So yeah, the Fuegoleon thing bothered me. I don't really mind the Black Bulls coming in as much. I think the only problem I have, and it was my problem even when they were selecting the characters to go with them, is that like you would think more of the Golden Dawn characters would show up. Like the fact that Tabata went out of his way to kill like half off the Golden Dawn members. I'm like, bro, how is it that you got the Black Bulls with all these broken ass characters, but then like, especially when you find out that Gray's ability is transmutation, Gordon's ability essentially allows him to let Henry cheat his fucking detrimental ability, and the man gets a new haircut on top of that. For some reason, the bottle really likes cutting people's hair. He's done this with like 3 fucking characters already. But it irks me. The one thing I don't like about Black Clover is that it very much favors the Black Bulls, and it runs that risk of doing what Fairy Tail does, where like Fairy Tail is just overwhelmingly goated, but like the other guilds are either okay or mediocre as fuck, right? That's my problem. That Golden Dawn was always viewed as like this high tier ass guild, but like there's only like a couple of characters in there that are goated. The 2 most goated characters in that whole guild is Mimosa and Yuno, both of which are more seen around Black Bulls than Golden Dawn members, for God fucking sake. Mimosa actually just seems to always be included in every other arc, regardless of the guild, regardless of which group she's in. She's just always around Asta and Noelle, primarily those 2 specifically. And I'm just like, what the fuck do we do? Like, what? So I don't like the fact that they kind of underutilize the other guilds, especially when you realize that like of the other captains, you have barely any representation. Like fucking Fuegoleon's guild, you only somewhat recently found out about his vice captain, who we've only seen in the elf arc as an elf, and then Leopold, who like very rarely seems to get the kind of love and respect he fucking deserves. Jack's guild has like 2 members from it, one of which is Seke, and I would like to think that Tabata, even putting that Seke shit in the recent chapters, has plans to do something with Seke that means something, because God knows this hoo-ha comedy shit, it's like funny, but I do like the chapter that has him recognize his own weakness, because it can easily lead to something better if Tabata writes it properly. The biggest problem I think this arc has, and I think it's just Black Clover in general, is the over favoring of the Black Bulls. That's like the biggest problem that this whole arc has, and Black Clover as a whole. It overly favors the Black Bulls ad nauseum. You got, like, when you think about the skill set of the Black Bulls, it's like, what the fuck? This is an absolutely broken group. I will say Noct is also one of the best things about Spade Kingdom. Noct is a fucking goated fucking character, and probably one of people's favorites. Actually, I think he was like top 3 in the last poll. It's like Noelle, Asta, then Noct. I'm glad Noelle's up there, because I think Noelle's a good character, even though her fight's kind of hoed. But it's not really Noelle's fault directly. It's more of like things surrounding that fight that fucked that fight up. But let's get back to fucking Lucifero, because that's the part of the arc that people have had the most issues with, and then, ironically enough, it's the last section of the arc, and people don't like it primarily because of what's recently happened, like in the last couple of chapters. I think you get that cool shot of Asta and Liebe in their double union cutting up this fucking mat, cutting open the gates and shit, and you're thinking everyone's cool, and then Lucifero shows up and says, I'm gonna fuck your shit all the way up. And I think the fan base was like, ooh, this is about to be where it comes down. And then we realized the only characters who are going to be throwing hands is really going to be captains. And you're sitting there going, ooh, shit. This could be really fucking good. And then Lucifero starts fucking them all up. Pretty much. He's consistently fucking up the whole squad. Makes sense, because Lucifero's a fucking demon, and some of these captains couldn't even hang with fucking the demons they were dealing with, like fucking Real and Charlotte. You getting your shit pushed all the way in because you could barely swing with Vanica. Noelle, same thing. You ain't hanging with Megicula. I expected you to get your shit pushed in. Mereleona was like the only other captain level character who was throwing hands, and it was completely justified because this bitch was taking down a whole big ass demon by herself with barely any problems, realistically. So that's perfectly fine. Jack, you weren't doing nothing because you couldn't even swing with Dante. So it makes sense that Lucifero is going to fuck you up. And the only other character I thought that potentially could have had some hands is Dorthy. And they would not deliver. And it would just bum me the fuck out. But understandable because it's fucking Lucifero. The thing with Dorthy that bummed me out was the Morrison thing because Morrison turns out to be a joke right afterwards. So it's like, Dorthy, how the fuck are you struggling? Like, what the fuck is going on? I don't know. That one, the Dorthy thing bothers me a lot, especially since she's been a mystery since she was created. Since we've seen that character, she's had so many questions around her, and they just don't do nothing with it. She's also one of the only captains that doesn't have like a proper backstory. Like we know Charlotte's, we know Jack's, we know Nozelle's, we know Mereleona and Fuegoleon's. Like she's the only one that doesn't have a proper back history. So it bothers me that she doesn't have the back history. She has a relatively cool power, and they keep off-screening her. Like we have yet to see her fight on screen. It's a shame. So then we get into the Lucifero fight, and Lucifero's fucking everybody up. The only characters right now that are hanging is like Yuno and Mereleona, and then Yami gets thrown back into the frame. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Fine, Yami. Throw them hands, Yami. You even get like this nice cool chapter where Yami and Noct finally using combination magic because their magic complements each other so well. And I'm like, let's fucking go. All that shit's cool because Lucifero ain't really taking any hits like that. He's at most he's just getting more and more annoyed. And then we get to where Lucifero punches both Noct and Yami through the... I also find it funny that Mereleona, the reason why Mereleona literally couldn't keep swinging with Lucifero is that this bitch's body couldn't handle how strong her magic is. It's fucking ridiculous. I love Mereleona. God damn it. But then we get to Lucifero punching holes in both Noct and Yami. And it's coming down to the wire. Mimosa can't heal him. Seke's in despair. Shit's about to go left real quick. Like, we don't know how the fuck this is about to come out. And Asa that devil union kicks in and he just says, fuck you, Lucifero. And part of me, I'm conflicted with the moment because although I think it should have happened, in the way this arc ends kind of makes me forgive it. I think if he outright cut Lucifero's heart, I would have been pissed. The way they decided to handle it, and actually I would have been fine with two options. The option they looked like they were going to go with, which is having Lucifero just get away, which I would have been fine with. Or I'm potentially okay with what's currently happened with Adramelech stealing Lucifero's heart. So Asa doesn't beat him, but is in the position to kill him, which I know some people aren't happy about because it essentially just sounds like the man just got the ridiculous power boost and can now cut this devil, even though up until this point, Asa couldn't even scratch this man consistently. The most he could do was draw blood. And then Lucifero proceeded to beat the ever-loving shit out of him. So then we get to the recent chapter where Adramelech steals his heart, steals Lucifero's heart. We're going to count it as a victory. He kind of flies off. We don't know if we doubt he's going back to the demon realm, but we know he's flying off. So he now has this motherfucker's heart, and we don't know what the plan is. He just knows that his goal was the heart. I can kind of accept that. I think would have been cooler is if Asta had pushed him to the point of potentially, like, I wish it would have. The way it probably would have been better is if Asta didn't like overwhelm him, which is the way the manga puts it off. He essentially overwhelms Lucifero. I kind of wish he hadn't overwhelmed him. I would have preferred it if it was more blow for blow. But Asta loses literally because he's just taking too much fucking damage and he hasn't been healed. And then Adrenaline comes in and hoes Lucifero and steals his heart. And it works out to the advantage of Asta, but it wasn't like Asta just outright beat him. I think people would have been cooler with that. But that's not unfortunately what we got. So we're dealing with what we currently have, which is that he pretty much almost beat him without beating him. And the Drummond just took advantage of the situation. And so when I look at the arc as a whole, obviously the post game for the arc will kind of help realize whether or not I'm like outright negative on the arc. But I get people's complaints that Lucifero literally accomplished nothing. He essentially just beat the shit out of a bunch of captains and then got caught and then got not one-shotted, but he got fucked up by Asta and Libe and then got his heart stolen. Like, the problem is when you look at this man's accomplishments, Lucifero accomplished nothing. So like Andromeda's like, well, fuck it, I'm the one who won, bitch. And so people's biggest issues with the arc is that there really wasn't any stakes. Nobody really died. No one even lost limbs, for God's sakes. And people are just disappointed with the overall arc as a whole. And I can see why you would be disappointed. And I've already talked about my disappointments in this video. But I think as a totality of what I got out of that arc, I mostly like the arc, but I recognize, I don't know if I put it below or above the elf arc, because there's certain things I like over the elf arc and certain things I don't. Like, let's be real here. The elf arc, for the most part, kind of devolves into the Asta, Yuno, and Noelle show, with some assistance from Yami, because it's fucking Yami. Like, when you think about it, the elf arc overall, it has a couple of good Black Bull moments that I fuck with a lot. And obviously Henry's introduced at the end of that arc. But like, it's mainly Asta, Noelle, and Yuno. You're dealing with one of the three with some good cameos and sequence fights of other characters. The Spade Kingdom arc, I think ironically enough, as much as I know people have their issues with the second half, which is the half that the anime doesn't cover, I actually like the second half of the Spade Kingdom arc a lot. Even with my problems with the arc, I still like the second half of the Spade Kingdom arc a lot, especially because it shows off more of the captains. That's the one thing I didn't really like about the elf arc. The elf arc doesn't show off the captains a lot. Like, Noelle gets fucked up in his first real fight. Then he only gets the one-shot pottery, and then he doesn't do anything. Mereleona gets probably the best moments with a good reintroduction moment for Fuegoleon and a pseudo fight for him. Jack shares his fight with Yami, and then we finally get to see Dorothy's powers. I think that's it. I think that's literally it. Whereas in Spade, I get to see Charlotte get to show off a bit, Real get to show off a bit, Jack gets to get showed off a bit. They kind of give them more like bits and pieces, although I would argue Dorothy just gets hoed in both arcs. I hate that. I hate it, because she's ironically enough one of the characters I want to know more about. And they still won't do shit with my boy Leopold. But at least he gets better screen time in this arc than he does in Elf. And Elf arc, they just teased it and pissed me the fuck off. So I don't know. I actually probably would say I probably might like Spade more overall. Although I think the Elf arc probably has better writing. But that's just my thoughts and opinions. Please leave yours in the comments section below. This is like a 30-minute video. So if you want to hear a bunch of Black Clover opinions, there you go. I probably would say I think I like the Spade arc overall more than the Elf arc. But I think the Elf arc is better written. But the Elf arc also has a fuck ton of build up behind it. So like that one was going to be better written. But I think as an arc overall, I think I like the Spade Kingdom arc more. But that's just me. And like I said, we still got to see the post game for the Spade arc. So we'll see what happens. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for the support. This has been your boy, the Insane Game Freak. As a game, play to win, and I will catch you guys later. Peace off.